I think I just want to take an account of the people in the room. So if you're an engineer, raise your hand. If you're an engineer in the room, amazing. You do design. Okay, nice. No designers. Project managers. Okay, the other people, what do you do? Eh? What? You do your best. Wait, no, I heard this guy. What do you say? You're a developer. So everyone here is an engineer. That's amazing. Okay, so in this session, I would be talking about building with builders, developer relations across sectors. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Ayo. I do developer relations, currently leading developer relations at Nuclei Protocol. We're building Decentralized AI. Socials, Developer Ayo on Twitter and GitHub, and you could read more about things I write on my blog at blog.shodipoayomide.com. And interest, developer relations, on-chain protocols, AI agents, and LLM, and obviously X-Forward too. Moving on. Let's talk about what exactly developer relations is. So this is one thing that we have spoken about a lot of times, and you personally have heard. Funny story is, I moved into DevRel from engineering specifically because I was working at a company, and they told me, hey, present what you're working on. I presented what I was working on, and the following month I resigned. Why? I went into DevRel full-time. Because why? I found something I did love. I said, I want to do engineering. At the same time, I want to talk to developers. I want to talk to developers. I just want to work with developers. I want to work with the community, basically. So the first thing we're going to define here is relation. So relation, as you can see here, is the connection between people that shapes their experience. Then developer relations put together is building bridges between your company's technology and developers who use it. So if you say you're going to get into developer relations, so also another context to bring to this is DevRel is the umbrella, right? So under DevRel, we have multiple departments. We have technical writers, we have community managers, we have developer relations engineers, we have a lot of roles, basically. So it's a lot of things, but this is the umbrella. But ideally, you need to understand exactly what your company is doing from a technical standpoint and be able to relate that to fellow developers. Because you don't want to manage a community, even though you are, for instance, a community manager, right? And you cannot communicate or help, you're in this scenario where somebody reports a problem, say something was down or you're just having some sort of problem, and you have to go talk to somebody, talk to like 5 people because you don't have the answer, because you don't understand what is happening, and like, there's no point of you being there. But this is actually what DevRel is. So probably you're going to be like me, and a month after now, you are coming into developer relations and saying, okay, I love engineering, but at the same time, I want to go to conferences. I want to talk to other developers. I want to build something, especially SaaS companies, and you want to go back to developers and say, hey, this is what you can build with my company and what we're building. The challenge here in DevRel is there's a lot of things, right? There's a lot of things to go over. There are lots of technologies. There are lots of things to understand. So the learning curve is not as easy. So for example, say you are a backend engineer at MoneyPoint, for instance, or we could say Paystack or any of these companies. You probably say you have to learn Rust or Golang or Node.js. And you probably keep doing that over and over again. But like in developer relations, you wake up the next morning and you have to like a lot of things happen over time. It's not just about the blockchain space. For those that know, I work in blockchain. It's not just about blockchain, but even in the Web2 space. There are lots of things you have to keep learning over and over and over again. And this is one of the major challenges of developer relations. So it's not that you just have to say, okay, I know. For example, I've met engineers who, for example, I've interviewed engineers where I'm like, okay, do you know about EI? Do you know about, say, smart EOAs that came out in March? Do you know about account abstraction? Do you know about like all this new and like things that we would call simple? Right? Like, I have no idea what this is. But you tell them, I want to build this one thing. They're like, okay, cool, I'm going to build it. Right? I'm sure some of us here were like that, right? Like, you're not up to, like, you don't follow the trends, but like, you can actually build. Right? So these are two kinds of people. But let's move on. When we talk about challenge, this right here is the challenge. Right? Like we said, there are things like X-Forward to parachains, core processors, and the funniest thing is that many of these things are really, so all of these things as you see, they are not, how will I put it? They are not, what's the right, I'm trying to get the right word. They are not rocket science to a lot of people. Like this, if you understand everything in this screen, raise your hand. I'll be so excited. If you know every single thing that I wrote here, raise your hand. Every single thing, check, check. Like 1 second, check. Raise your hand. Oh, I think you do? Oh, it keeps flicking. Okay, does everyone know everything on the screen? Okay. The thing about developer relations is that every single thing that you do see on this screen, you do need to understand it. You do need to like read up on it. And this is like me just typing from my head, right? You do need to know and like every single one of it. So for example, okay, so in my case, I intersect between blockchain and AI. So that is why you see fuzzy extractors, small language models, LLMs, tiny recursive models, and things like that, basically, because they're more AI, machine learning focused. So because I dabble in between those two places. But in DevRel, you need to understand a bunch of these things and a lot more. But let's move on. So as a developer relations professional, like I said, you are firstly an engineer. Even though, say, like, even though you want to do community, to an extent, you must have written some line of code before on the back end, on the front end, in some way, right? You will wear multiple hats. This is an assurance. Today, you could be writing code. Tomorrow, you could be doing, speaking at a conference. You could be running a workshop. Next tomorrow, you could be writing documentation. The next day after that, you could be learning a new language. Yes. But thanks to AI right now, it makes all of that really simple and you can move pretty fast now. Yeah, you will sit with your fellow engineers through problems and bugs for a very long time. And that's primarily your job, right? You will see other engineers who are building on your project, on your protocol. They're going to have issues, they're going to have problems, right? They need somebody who understands. They need a fellow engineer who understands how they feel and what it means to be a builder. For instance, I was talking to a friend about something that we're trying to integrate a company, and they told me they didn't have this small thing that I wanted. They had no way to track who deposited what into what sub account. And that one thing made me feel, I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. I left. Right? I'm like, who is doing DevRel here? Who wrote this document? Even the documentation wasn't what I wanted. So that is the job of somebody doing developer relations, right? Documentation, I'm pretty sure we have used some sort of software that the documentation wasn't fully complete. And you were like, there were lots of inconsistencies over here. So you understand the importance of having every single one of these components. So it then becomes your job to make sure that all these components are complete. Let's move on. Yes, like I said here as well, you will build demos, right? You will write technical articles. Specifically, also, if you notice, I added a clause here. I said technically correct articles. There is some, and this is one of the problems with AI models that I've seen as well. When you tell AI models to go on the internet and kind of like research about something, they could actually find an article that is technically incorrect and go ahead with that implementation. So they're not necessarily verifying that this source is. Sometimes, obviously, they will probably go to like the official documentation to cross-reference and all. But like there are articles that I have seen that are not technically correct. So specifically, like I said, you would write technically correct articles because firstly, you are what? You are a what? An engineer. Let's move on. So yes, you are excited about talking to engineers and excited about building developer communities. Right, you're excited about connecting with your fellow engineer to talk about what they're building, how like you can support them, how can they do more with the protocol you're working with or with the service you're offering, basically. Let's move on. So what excites you? This is also one thing you also need to talk about. This is also something you think about, actually. You need to figure out kind of like what excites you. Like I mentioned in the former slides, there are lots of things. Like I said, there are the AI things, there's the blockchain things, there are a lot of things. Even within the AI space, you could also specialize between like specific things, basically. There's a lot of things to do, basically. So you need to find out what exactly excites you. It could be the core concept of decentralization. It could be self-sovereign identities and decentralized identities, which is going to be a huge deal soon. So if you're thinking of coming into the blockchain space, I think you should be thinking about decentralized identities. And basically what I think we have Solana ID, we have something that used to be Polygon ID, but they've changed the name, and a ton of decentralized ID solutions. You also want to focus on that as well. If it's going to be a huge thing coming up soon. So you want to also figure out fully autonomous AI agents and large language models and small language models. And for anyone here doing machine learning, you want to be thinking about how to run models on edge, on small devices, either through tiny recursive models or small language models. Let's move on. So there are two kinds of developers. So you also need to understand the developer audience you are talking to. There are different kinds of developers, right? And there are two types in this case. So number one is the vertical axis. So these people understand the blockchain in general, and they understand your project, the protocol, and everything. So they know your company, they know you, they love it, they like it. And these are the developers that we all love. We love them so much. Because, right, like, they have very straightforward questions. You have a problem, okay, this is my problem, here's your solution, done and dusted. Then there is the other side, which is the horizontal, as you see that. They understand just your product and service and protocol. And in some cases, they do not fully understand it. And in some cases, they have no idea what the blockchain is. So in this context, you are, well, I think if you've done a good enough job laying the foundation for your developer relations department or in your developer relations team, this would not be a problem. But if you haven't, then this will be a problem because there are no resources to point people to, right? You haven't written any technically correct articles that you can make reference to. There are no videos, there are no workshops, there are no open source examples that they could take a look at. So you have a problem on your hands, and which is going to require you to do a lot of meetings and explanation, and you don't want that. So, but these are the two kind of developers that exist. So what you want to do ahead of time is that you want to create content, you want to build examples, you want to go to conferences, you want to have conversation with people, you want to do Discord hours, Twitter spaces, talking about your protocol, what you're building, and pretty much just let people ask questions, basically. So let's move on. So 4 specific quadrants here. So now, okay, okay, that's what I did here. I'm trying to remember what I did here. Sorry. So, okay, so I wrote about, so these are basically different kinds of people. So new to Web3, new to your tech, need educational resources on building on-chain. Now, so these kinds of people have no idea what the blockchain is. They probably have some idea. They know it's some sort of ledger. That's what I think it is. But like, they're not entirely sure exactly how the blockchain comes into play in the application. They have some idea, but like, they're not essentially sure. So you need to basically have enough resources, point them to the right places so that they know what they're doing. Moving on, they know the blockchain, they are new to your tech, right? So these are the people that most people are looking out for, especially within the blockchain space, right? They understand how the blockchain works, but they are new to your protocol or to your specific service, right? So in that case, what you need to do is, number one, have enough resources over and over again. The same thing I've repeated over and over again. You can never have, for example, we're building on Cosmos SDK, for those that know it. It's for building your own blockchain. We migrated from Avalanche Hyper SDK to Cosmos SDK, and we got asked the question, hey, are you going to need any help? I said, no, we are not going to need any help. And why did I say that? Because there were an infinite number of resources available within the Cosmos ecosystem. We will hardly probably have any questions. We had one, by the way, so. But there were a good amount of resources available. But yeah, I think let me just jump to the last point that I wrote here, which is never assume everyone's technical experience. Everyone has different motivations, interests, and skill sets. So you shouldn't assume that even when writing articles, you should never assume a lot of things, right? Don't assume that somebody understands some pre-existing things they have to have set up. So what you just need to do, 2 things. Either you break your articles into parts, or you always obviously introduce links. But don't jump to conclusions that, okay, this and this is set up, blah, 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 and just jump right into the technicalities. It confuses a lot of people, and especially for newcomers into your ecosystem. So always have like a breakdown from overview to like the really complicated stuff in your documentation or article. Let's move on. Yeah. So the traditional funnel here. So, but I think let's move on all of this stuff, and let's talk about the pyramid structure of developer success. So ideally, as someone doing developer relations engineering, your goal and what success looks like for you is that fellow engineers and fellow founders feel successful while building on your protocol or your service. They feel extremely successful, and sometimes you see you are building on some sort of, I don't know, it could be, okay, I don't want to mention names, but like it could be any service, basically, right? You have problems, and you reach out to the company, and the person you are reaching out to has no idea what you're talking about, and it takes them probably 2 days to figure out an answer for you. Now, that's a problem of bad developer experience, and that is what you are supposed to fix, right? So now, this is for people who find themselves in that position where they love engineering, at the same time, they love talking to fellow developers and kind of like helping them through problems, and like just want to just talk to people, talk to engineers, and help them build great things. So basically, like also here's what I wrote specifically for developer success, is that you want to help build communities by collaborating with them, but just generally basically building communities, right? So this is the one bit that a lot of people don't like, right? Because it involves a lot of talking and a lot of people, and some people might ask questions that you're like, it's like someone asks you a question that the answer is so clear to their face, and you're like, what's happening here? So you're going to get all of those repetitive questions, but it's all part of your job as a developer relations individual, right? All those questions. But at the same time, your goal is to figure out a mechanism that you can install to make sure that all of these questions that are repetitive stops repeating themselves. You could have a bot, you could have a knowledge base, you could have just or improve the structure and your structure of your documentation, or write more technical articles. But there are obviously ways to fix that. Then obviously your company should provide grants, credits, funding to developers or founders to find ways to help them be successful as well. Moving on, connect projects to projects. This is also one very important part. It's not every time that projects, for example, I think, let me even take a case scenario. In one of the companies we were working at, when we're trying to build a structure to support developers, a lot of people were saying that, for example, the gas fee on this chain is a lot cheaper than this one. So at some point, I said we should no longer. That's not a conversation. It's not necessarily as what is cheaper. Developers don't care about that, and founders do not. Ideally, what they care about the most really is if I'm building on a specific chain, say BNB, Polygon, or whatever, is how much support am I going to get if I'm building on this chain? That's the real question, and that is the one thing we focus on that helped us be successful at Polygon, right? We found ways to support developers more than a lot of other chains, and I think we're really successful doing that. So we connected projects to projects. If we find a product within the ecosystem who is building something that we feel like someone else might need, we set up a meeting, say, hey, I think you guys should talk. And they talk, and they make friends, and they both make money together and do collaboration of Twitter Spaces and Discord hours and things like that. Let's move on. So 4 simple questions that you always need to ask. Number 1 is, how are developers feeling? And ideally, you as a developer here, you want people to actually reach out to you and say, how are you feeling about building? So, and this is one thing that we don't have a lot in this part of the world, right? And so raise your hand here if you've been building on a specific Nigerian service and like someone reaches out to you and say, hey, how are you building? Is everything going well? Like, does that happen a lot? No. Like, they're just going to give you APIs, give you documentation, say, good luck. I'm like, bruh, like, reach out to me, ask me how I'm doing, right? So, well, like, it's part of your job doing developer relations to reach out to this developer, say, how is it going? Because no matter how intelligent you are as a developer, there's probably something you do not know. And specifically, it could be about best practices. For example, we started integrating Fireblocks recently for something we're building. And like, it's not like I don't know how it works, right? It's not like I don't know how to set up Fireblocks policies. But obviously, I want to understand what is the best practice to setting up Fireblocks policies. What is the best practice for funds management within Fireblocks? I know how it works, but I just want to have a conversation with somebody that understands it and tell me what's the best practice of doing this. You want to know. So when you know how they're feeling, you want to know why they're feeling that way. If developers are feeling specific, you want to know why. What can I do to help them feel different, right? And the last question is, how are you going to get there? Now you know why they're feeling that way. The question is, how are you going to get there? So then once you figure out how you're going to get there, you're going to apply that across ecosystem, technology, and community. And this is so when you do DevRel, one interesting thing is, so you don't necessarily form a, if you do blockchain stuff here, let me see your hands, your right, Solidity. Okay, cool. So in case of DevRel, we don't necessarily contribute to the core protocol development. So ideally, what I always love to do when I'm leading DevRel teams is to make sure that even for the core protocol teams, we take a couple of things off their hands. Number 1, we take things off like change logs. We take up documentation. All we demand is just a skeleton of what exactly has changed, and we just populate with change logs and updated documentation. But let's move on. So yeah, I think, let me see. So I don't think I have to go through this because a lot of things I've said is basically explained this, so I think I can just move on from this slide. So let's talk about building a support system. So this one thing. So support system in the blockchain space is currently a mess. It's currently a mess because there's a lot happening. So the common mistakes and these are common things that a lot of people do, and the first thing is they create private channels for every project. That's in no way scalable because you're going to have a ton of projects reaching out to you. And this is also why you have a channel with that protocol And even though you have them there, they don't respond to you. This is why, because it's not scalable. Once you start having a lot more projects, it just doesn't work. Right. The next question is, oh yeah, same questions asked repeated in private channels. Too much waste of time. So one-on-one is good early on, but it just doesn't scale. So that one-on-one conversation with each project, it's like Telegram. I could literally open my Telegram right now. I have so many messages. I'm on so many group chats. I'm scared of Telegram. Like back then, like when I was like once I see people on Telegram, I'm like, oh, here we go again. I just turn it off because I'm like, it's too much messages. But let's talk about what exactly we're supposed to be doing. First thing is passive support. So obviously, like I said, first things first is that you build a knowledge base, right? You want to have a one-stop shop for the most important things, the most popular questions. You want to have a knowledge base for those things. You want to write more technical articles. Engineers trust engineers. Ideally, I think that's how it should be. but engineers trust engineers. Why are you doing like this? You don't trust him. But yeah, engineers trust engineers. And third-party side, screen recording, FAQs, developer resources channels on your Discord channel. Then obviously change logs, release notes. But yeah, a lot of people don't like this part. They don't like, you just publish, we're done. Here you go. Look at it. Things have changed. There's a breaking change. Open the code. Look at it. Like, they don't even update the README. That's how bad it is right now. People, they just like merge, bam, that's it. So they don't want to write release notes, no change logs. But when we figured that out at some of the companies I worked at, we said that it's no longer the developer's job to do that anymore. We are going to take full ownership for change log, release notes, and all of those things. And part of it kind of like DevRel teams at companies often disappear. I've been in companies where I worked and they didn't know I worked there. Because so what do you do? I'm like, I do DevRel. So what's that? So that was why I started like intentionally integrating myself into multiple teams and finding ways I can like technically support these people. Yeah, sample code, boilerplates, troubleshooting guides and gist or blog post. Let's move on. Proactive support, right? So you wouldn't do the channel thing for everybody. There are specific people you want to do that for, right? You want to do that for tier 2 to tier 1 builders and founders. You want to have regular AMAs with them on Discord, on Twitter, to kind of like give them more exposure. Because obviously, you would not categorize everybody that's building on your project or protocol a tier 1 partner or a tier 1 project. So you need to categorize that properly based on your internal KPIs and pretty much how proactive even the founder or engineer is, right? You want to have technical office hours and yep, at the end of the year, you don't want to miss that. You want to have a developer survey and feedback collection at least once a year, November or December. You want to know how developers felt that year so you know exactly what to improve the following year. Let's move on. So yeah, this is the most important part, the reactive support here. So you want to have dedicated support channels on Telegram or Discord for this. Now, this is for the 1% of the 1%. This should not, like, this is for like specific projects, right? If you really want to scale, like what success looks like for me when I'm doing developer relations is we stop having a lot of like manual questions because there are so much answers on the internet for those things. So there are no like regular questions anymore. So now it's all core questions or like specific things that you cannot find. And when you notice the question reoccurring, obviously you then write a knowledge base update a knowledge base, write an article, or even build an example about it. Or your next presentation should probably be on that topic. Right, use a ticketing system, peer-to-peer. So peer-to-peer, this is always very nice. When a community member has a problem, another community member brings support. That's just basically so you have a good developer community. And obviously, I mentioned this already, bots for knowledge base. So measurement strategy. First things first, in respect to developer success, you don't measure every single thing. If you try to do that, there's just too much data, and it's hard to, because as DevRel, it's difficult for people to say, like, predict or define what you do, and that's the truth. So just so you know, in case you're thinking of switching, it's difficult for people to say this is what you do. So you need to be able to analyze the metrics and say, okay, this has been okay, we did all this thing, we spent all this money, this is the results for all of that. Instead, focus on a story. Focus on what were the KPIs that were initially set, right? Focus on story along that line and basically measure from there, right? Q1 to Q4. So pick a specific emotion you want to shift in the community. After asking how people are feeling, they feel happy. What do you think can be better? I think if we have better documentation, then when you're measuring the next quarter, they say, okay, I feel this way, I feel that way, I'm excited. Are they always dropping stickers on Discord or Slack? How are people feeling about it? Then always ask, like, how do you feel about the documentation? Like, always interacting with people. And you can't tell me that if, say, you're building on Nuclei or whatever company I'm working for, and I reach out to you personally on Twitter or anyway, I say, how are you feeling about the documentation? How are you feeling about building? And you make recommendations and you see your recommendations being implemented. There's a particular way you feel about those things. So these are things you also have to do. Let's move on. So I think some final thoughts. Yeah. So improved technology will always help create better experience generally, but developer experience is still human. So you need to be welcoming to people, to new people in the ecosystem. Like AI models are going to keep improving. They are going to get a lot smarter. And but I think ideally there are just some roles that are very important, like developer relations. You consider documentation, but there's really nothing like having a meeting with somebody. And for example, right now, AI models doesn't know what is best practice for one thing, right? You could tell, okay, what's the best practice for building with Fireblocks? It's going to tell you, okay, do this and this was best practice. But at the same time, it's different when you know somebody who works at Fireblocks and he tells you this is what you do. You trust that more. Because no, I'm not going to trust this. I'm not going to trust. Claude is amazing. I love you, but no. No. So be welcoming to the fellow developers, fellow engineers, fellow founders who are building on what you build on the company you're working for. I just kind of like find different ways to support them, different ways to be nice to them, and just different ways to help them be successful. You can be working at like top companies. Say you get a job at MoneyPoint, for instance. Like say they're offering some sort of platform as a service or APIs, right? It's your job to make sure that whoever is building, using these APIs, using these services, using this platform, they are successful. They are not having problems. They are not stuck, right? And even when they are coming, you don't get funny questions. Where do I find my API key? Imagine getting that. Okay, I've gotten it. What do I do next? Okay, well, okay, that's not a question. No, that would be a funny one. You probably delete that chat. But yeah, you want to, like, what, who can give me a funny question? I don't even know, because I don't know how to ask a funny question. Who can give me a funny question? Tell me, what do you say? How do you use the API? What? No, no, that one is too funny. I wouldn't respond to that. No, I think I like this one. He said, how do I use the API? Now, but that's actually a legitimate question. Like, that's a legitimate question. But, like, even though some of us would be like, no, but, like, it's a legitimate, but that question says a lot about you, Sha. But it's fine. But jokes aside, right? It's still a legitimate question, and I think, for example, one way you would solve that question is in the API interface, right? In the in the dashboard interface, and I do know some companies do this, right? They link you directly after getting your documentation. You see some sort of grid down where they link you directly to the documentation right from there. Right? Just because of questions like this, once these questions like this come up, you just have to figure out ways that it just doesn't come up again, because you don't want to have that question twice or three times, because what that means is that you're doing a bad job. So like I said, technology will keep improving, AIs will keep getting better, ChatGPT is going to obviously get amazing, Claude, which other one again? Gemini is as well as amazing. What else? What's the top AI models? What? GenSpark. Grok. Yeah, Grok, Elon. What else? What? What is that? Uh, what is that? If you use DeepSeek here, raise your hand. Uh-uh. Wow. DeepSeek over Quen. Which one? Who is this Quen here? Eh? These are the most of my people. What is DeepSeek? Okay, moving on. So I think for DeepSeek, mine was, I think I have this challenge where if you launch, even though it's an MVP, know what you're doing. I had a problem, like I had a problem with DeepSeek when they launched in respect to like obviously it wasn't a response thing, it was more of a UX thing, right? It just wasn't it for me, and ever since I'm like, and when Coin launched as well, it was, I don't know, it just worked for me, and I just kept on using that. But I think finally, I think I would say take care of people emotion, try as much to, yeah, blah, 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 blah. This special advice from me to you, read it, I'm not going to say it, but thank you very much. I'm almost out of time. 12 minutes to spare. 12, because I saw her standing right there, so I said I must not exist my time. So do I take questions? Do I step off the stage? One question. Okay, who has one question for me? Okay, one. I don't know. I don't want to buy it. Who want to come and pick? I don't want them to come and shoot me after. Someone should help me pick. This guy, please help me pick somebody. Oh, that guy. Okay. Hi. Yes, Mike.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. So, I want to ask a question based on what you suggested because I recently started a developer relations role, and based from my own experience, right? I love to support, but I don't want to be on like an endless conversations with developers because they expect you to assist them with almost everything, even to like maybe help them build the application. So that part where you said, so that part where you said, I think it's going to be great to like reach out to the developers to know how they are, faring with the whole API stuff and all. Because
Yeah.
I feel like when I started tech, there is a specific acronym. They call it RTMF. Um, yeah, thank you. So I just didn't want to say that stuff, but most developers they kind of shy away from documentation. They see what they're supposed to do there, but they want to like interact with someone. And I also experienced something. I wouldn't mention the organization anyways. Some developers they just want to have this feeling that they are speaking with someone from this company. It's something they can do, right? But they just want to just get on a call with you even after you have explained what they are supposed to do. So based on your own experience, do you think it is a good idea to like reach out to developers and ask them how this
What's
is?
your problem?
Yeah, because I'm trying to.
Okay. I think. Thank you for that question. It's a good question. I think my answer to that question will be very brief. I think number one is it says a lot about the kind of developer community that you have already built. So the first thing ideally would be if you see that reoccurring over and over again, is what you need to do is to kind of like implement, for example, you could implement like Discord hours or real say bi-weekly calls with the entire community. Also, for the thing of developers wanting to do calls all the time, is that a thing? Because no, right? I no, because I love to, but the part of not reading documentation, we're all victims of that. We don't read. I understand it. It's the same thing. So,